Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have a very special guest named Davey Reed. I found him on Instagram, actually through my friend Jarrett. Actually, quite a few of the people that I met are through Jarrett. He's a good networker. But either way, Davey has a very interesting story for us today, and I'm very glad we get to meet and talk about it. So, Davey, who are you and what do you do? Just to start.
Hey, nice to meet you, man. As you said, my name's Davey Reed. I have a podcast called the Davey Podcast. I met Jarrett through a buddy, and I think it's important to navigate a world full of like-minded people. And like you said, Jarrett's really good for that. But you meet so many friends through people, and it's like just becomes a blur how everyone met, and it's like a little podcast world happening. But yeah, we were talking about before we got on here about plant medicine, helping with addiction. I was an addict since, fuck, man. You could probably go back to, I started smoking weed in 6th grade, which isn't common for somebody. And from there, in 6th grade, I had already taken a Xanax. I tried Vicodin. I was just around the wrong people and also just had addiction in me. I've always been intense in anything I do. So if I do something, I really fucking do it. So if I take a drug, I take a lot of that drug, So just to kind of get an idea of where all this happened, I always smoked weed, and throughout my life, I just felt like there was something wrong, or like that this reality was a little, I don't know, unsettling for me for whatever reason. And I started taking Adderall in 8th grade. And when I say I started taking Adderall, people are like, oh, I take Adderall. But like, I would take 30 milligrams at a time every day till where I could like see out of one eye, like that was just common for me. Like I was really on my way to having a fucked up body. I was your heart can stop for that easy. So one day me and my friends are hanging out, and I'm still just casually fucking off being a drug addict. And we take mushrooms. And for me, this is just getting high, right? We're going to have some fun. We're going to take mushrooms and hang out. And sure enough, have you ever taken mushrooms? I'm assuming. Yeah. They're like the grand teacher, right? It's not, for everyone else, they are having fun. And for me, it was like a teacher came into the room and was like, hey, motherfucker, I want you to see this about yourself, and just held up a mirror to me. And you can't lie to yourself in those situations. And it was the first time where I was like, oh my God, like I've been an absolute moron. Like I've just been screwing myself left and right and being really down on myself. And mushrooms have a beautiful way of also making you feel okay, where they're like, hey, no, don't, like, this is your path. Don't worry about that. You need it to be like this, because how are you going to help the others who are like you? And, that it brought like a beautiful message to me. And time goes on, I still fuck off and mess around. I'm not going to just one mushroom trip isn't going to help me out like that. It helped a little bit, but I'm a stubborn, so I keep going at it. And then me and my girlfriend, we decided to take LSD for the first time. And that was like the real wake up. It was all the mushroom trips originally built into this one moment where the LSD was basically like, this is what you have to do. And if you go back, you are going to be punished so severely, like a god speaking. It wasn't like LSD. It was like, if you dare to go back to the way you were yesterday, like I promise you have nothing but nightmares set up for you. And I snapped out of it. I was like, sometimes you have these breakthroughs and you can kind of forget about them. But this was like, I'll never be the same. Like we can't go back to yesterday. And from that moment forward, I never took hard drug again. I snapped out of it completely, withdrawed my ass off for days, and really started digging into psychedelics as a healing mechanism and a real entity or a spiritual practice rather than getting high, And that was pretty much the beginning. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like there's some people who have this perception of, psychedelics as, oh, they're just party drugs. I'm here to just get all fucked up. And, some people do that for those reasons.
They do.
But I feel like these are the kind of substances that truly like you said, are going to tell you something. They're going to tell you things that you might have been ignoring. They're going to let you
Yes.
know about, the most important things that are going on in your life. Like, time is passing by. Are you sure you want to keep taking this drug that's turning you into this person? Like, look at this path
Yeah.
you could go down. And so that's interesting. Like, so did you stop cold turkey right after that?
The LSD trip, I stopped cold turkey. I withdrawed my ass off for days. I was, when I say I did drugs, that was, I started with pills and I ended up doing heroin. I smoked meth, tried crack, whatever you could do. And people will say, like, wow, how could you do that? But, like, people don't understand, like, to get to doing heroin, you are already so broken. Like, you're already talking to somebody who was taking 20 Vicodin a day. And I'm built different. I know a lot of people would die from what I did. And somehow, in that sense, my body, I was a cockroach, like surviving the fucking nuclear war. I could just get through it. But yeah, then I started taking kratom for a bit because I was realizing, like, okay, there's plant medicine and then there's pharmaceuticals, right? So, okay, if I'm withdrawing from this, I'll take kratom. Well,
What is kratom? I
kratom,
don't even know what that is.
so kratom is just a plant. Basically, it's not an opiate, but it acts on your opiate receptors. You can get it at this fucking store, and by means, I'm not telling anyone to go do kratom. Kratom is very dangerous as well, and it has a misleading consumption that it is not addictive. It is very addictive and has a very hard withdrawal as well, but just not from comparable from what I was doing. So I was willing to take a step. And so then from that, yeah, dude, it was just it. I was off to the races. And then I stopped smoking weed for a really long time because anytime I would smoke weed, I would end up back in that like LSD mushroom trip, even if I just smoked a little bit. It's like I opened a portal in my brain that was so deep that even if I microdose, I'd end up at the bottom of that portal. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? So I had to take a real sobriety hit. And then, started getting healthy, got my physical body, started working out, got my levels all, went to the doctor, figured out what my levels were, got them fixed. Then I tried smoking weed again. And I did it with Jarrett and Dakota. I microdosed and smoked weed for the first time in a long time. And it was the first time, like, wow, this is what it's supposed to be like. Like, this is a tool again. But yeah, man. They are entities, like, I don't look at them as like tools anymore. I used to think like, oh, this is tool, and they are tools, but I look at them as almost like gods. And I know that sounds so crazy, but like a demigod or like an entity or something, just something so beyond us. Because when I look at things in life, like, why are all these things legal? Well, things are legal that are terrible for you, and it really makes you think like why people say this is the devil's realm, right? Like this is where Satan's domain, or say God of the wind, in the Bible. And then psychedelics are illegal. It's like the one thing that saved my life is illegal. Like, makes it so hard to trust. So yeah, I put a lot of faith in these things now, and I think America needs that. I think we need the shaman back.
Yeah, that's really well said. Like, I had this guy on who's a PhD in pharmacology, so like
Wow.
studying of different drugs on how they impact the brain, and he was like, from what I can tell, the two drugs that I would say that are, have zero net positive effects are alcohol and cocaine, and probably some of those other ones you were doing have zero net
Oh,
positive.
dude.
He just hadn't studied those, but like, it's so interesting that you can go to the liquor store. A kid could like grab a bottle of alcohol, throw it in his, jacket, and
It's right
walk
there,
out the
dude.
store. And I'm like, why is that the case when plants that grow in the ground, some of them can truly change your life for the better, make you a more peaceful, positive, loving person? And why in the world are they illegal? And I'm very glad that it seems like there's a slight revolution that's occurring in the thought of this. It's
Yeah,
like these documentaries that are coming out, more people on podcasts talking about it. Just, I
absolutely.
feel like it's becoming more and more mainstream, which I feel like you said, that might be one of the main things America needs to become less polarized and more loving towards each other. But
Dude, like we used to have, you used to be able to go do ketamine with a therapist. Now I got to go do ketamine with some fucking raver kid. Like, that's not, it's just been so demoralized. And it goes back to the whole thing. Like, we want to stay away from, like, Western medicine wants to be like, we don't, Eastern medicine is not the way, right? Like, you can't go get healed in the jungle. Well, then why do you hear about all these fucking billionaires going to the jungle? Like, why do you hear about all these important people acting like they know witchcraft when they're just going to do an ayahuasca? But like, it's not here. Why? My Blue Cross Blue Shield should pay for me to go do an ayahuasca ceremony if I'm struggling with alcoholism, or go do ibogaine. Ibogaine has an 89% chance of cure rate of all addiction, and it's a Scheduled 1 drug here. Like, I'm talking about from porn, I'm talking about from anything, 89%. Rehab is 5%. Like, it's so crazy, man. It's such a money thing, and whoever runs the world, I mean, they're a bunch of pieces of shit. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah, maybe they are, or maybe they are just, maybe these people who are now in power are maybe brainwashed into the propaganda that was being pushed before. Like sometimes I try to say, oh yeah, they are malevolent and they're doing this on purpose. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are ignorant to this. Maybe there's, who knows? But yeah, I agree. Like, looking into the scientific studies of psilocybin alone, you're completely dumbfounded when you see that you can be healed from PTSD, alcohol abuse, like you said, porn addiction, all kinds of different things. Or like, you have a terminal illness diagnosis, you'll have such peace with just one trip of mushrooms. Like, oh, death is actually part of the cycle. Like, it's not something I need to be depressed about. It's something I can accept with open heart. And
it's very necessary. Yeah.
It's a necessary part of life. It's so interesting. It's like, some people are like, why in the world are you looking into these drugs? Like, that's for druggies, like,
yeah.
I'm like, well, I hate the word drug because, the word drug is so, it's one word and it's explaining like 1,000 different types of things. And I'm like, sugar is a drug. You're drinking coffee this morning. Come on, stop saying the word drug. It's like saying the word, I don't know, what's a good example? Like, religion. It's such a blanket statement for such a complex thing.
Yeah, no, literally, that's perfect. It is straight up, it's like saying religion. Hamilton Morris says it in a good way. He said either hate, like, or just accept the word drug for all things and think of drug as not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Because like because they are drugs, right? In the sense of I'm with you on that. It does suck that, like, because fucking fentanyl is a drug and then LSD is a drug, but I think the word drug has such a bad rap, and rightfully so. I mean, it goes back to, you have so many people demonize this, like, why can't everyone just be sober and peaceful? Well, this world isn't made for that. This world isn't, and for one, we're like missing something in Western society miserably, and that's our connection with our soul. And if these substances or drugs or plant medicine or whatever the fuck you want to call them bring me close to that, then I don't really care what you want to call them. You know what I mean? Because like, I'm going down this path regardless. I've already been down this path and it's already helped me. That's the thing. So many people want to say, like, they try battling arguments about stuff. I'm just going off what's helped me. I don't fucking know what's going to help you. I don't know if it's the right answer. I know that I was a piece of shit. I was a bad person. I started taking psychedelics, and now I can genuinely say I'm a good person. And that's all I can go off of, right? My own experience.
Man, would the people around you agree with that statement?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So my girlfriend originally, when she took psychedelics for the first time, she was like, oh my God, I didn't know this is what you were talking about. She thought it was going to be like taking Coricidin or something, like taking Robitussin, like taking a bunch of cough medicine. She was like, I didn't know we were going to the astral realm, And I would say my parents are very old school, but they have seen it. They've seen me become a better person. And even if it's not their path, they've been very, very thankful for what plant medicine has done for me.
Man, that's interesting. Yeah, like, one thing I need to mention is, there's cons to everything, including psychedelics. I've heard of people who, take it too often, or, some people who are more prone to schizophrenia maybe should be very careful before they just dive into something like this. And I've heard of people who have, like, perma-tripped, where, they take too much and now their brain isn't necessarily the same. They aren't the same person in a bad way. And, I think the moral out of a lot of this is, there needs to be more education regarding these substances. We need to analyze what is a true good drug and what is a true bad drug for each individual. Like, every individual has a different genetic makeup, and if we're, instead of saying say no to drugs, which we know doesn't work, like, that just doesn't work. Like, you're an example. People said, oh, when you're growing up, oh, don't do drugs, and people are just like, I don't care, I'm gonna do drugs, whatever, it's cool right now, I'm gonna try it. But if we have a discussion about, okay, if you want to take heroin, you can, but look at this path that it can lead you down. If you want to smoke weed, weed can actually be pretty detrimental for some. Some people turn into lazy couch potatoes and go off a cliff and just almost never come back. They kind of lose their soul. They lose their drive. Some people should never drink any alcohol ever because they turn into a raging anger machine. And it's like that. These are things that need to be discussed. If all of these discussions are hid under the rug, then I feel like people are they're gonna learn the hard way, just like you might have. And
yeah, absolutely. And I think this all goes back to we are missing shamanism in this country, because all those things you said, okay, you have the kid smoking weed, but what if he had someone a real shaman to guide him through that? To not like, hey, my buddy that knows how to that's been doing dabs for 6 years. I'm talking about like somebody who is at a facility, and our shamans would obviously be different, they would be very westernized, but he could go there and they could guide him. They'd be like, this is what you're experiencing through weed. This is why it's making you lazy. You're overdoing it, so on and so forth. And it's the same thing with anything. We have people who, I mean, honestly, I think alcohol sucks, but that's just me. But some people can just drink it and go to a wedding and have fun. And that probably is like a good concept of someone who does it right. But like with alcohol, for the past 200 years, 200 years ago, all of our existence, we never had anything stronger than 3%. And now we have 151 in the cabinet of your own home. That's where it gets, all these things are so amplified because we're scientists now, all, especially in America. We don't just do ayahuasca. We make DMT, we extract things to the purest little hit. And I think that we just need somebody to mentor us back into what these psychedelics really are, and they are a spiritual belief. And if you don't want to use it for that, you don't have to. But like for me, I don't know how people take LSD and go to parties, because the LSD would beat my ass. It'd be like, it would punish me.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, I would never that would never work for me. And I actually did it one time. Like I said, I would just go to the extreme when I would go to the extreme. So this is a while back. I took 7 hits of acid, and mind you, I've gotten on the paths and I've fallen back off paths, right? But I took 7 hits, and it was at a birthday party of mine, and I was just walking around acting like I was participating. I was acting like I was drinking beer and putting it down like a psychopath, and I would see all these people that I didn't want to be there, and they would all turn into dolls and fall apart. And I was like, just like chaotic energy. So my buddy, he brings in sage, and I didn't really believe in sage at the time. I don't know why. I'm very into conspiracy theories, but then I sometimes just have like I don't believe in astrology, or not now. I'm just saying, like, I was very hard-headed about things. But he was like, he came in and he lit the sage, and all these people left that I didn't want to be there. And I thought it was the most magical thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, dude, there might be something to plants even beyond psychedelics, So I'll light some sage around the house once in a while now, just to make sure everything's okay. But yeah, it was insane. Like, literally the 5 people that I was like, these people don't need to be here. He lit it, and they just like stood up, walked out like demons, or like that were being expelled. It was pretty magnificent. So I've been learning to appreciate plants in different ways lately.
Interesting. Yeah, like, I don't even know what sage is, but yeah, if you want to explain what that is first.
So sage is just like, I think it's like something you buy at like a crystal shop, and that's kind of why I was like, what the fuck, what is this? You know, my girl's really into crystals and stuff, and I've just never really like I've never grabbed a crystal and like been like, oh, I feel this, you know. And some people do, and more power to them. But I just never have. And that sage moment really, really I don't know, it woke something up into me to where I started thinking, okay, plants aren't just they're not just plants. There's something so much more than that. Yeah, so I mean, and check out sage. Like it's a beautiful smell. It's not. It's like you burn it in your house and you're like, wow, it's pleasant.
Interesting. Yeah, it says it's a member of the mint family.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. It reminded me of like when my mom would grow mint around the house, you know, outside. And but yeah, this stuff. I don't know. I was always like very. I don't know. I just thought it was like some bullshit voodoo stuff, and now I'm like, man, there really is something to this.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like, I've even tried some of like balama mushrooms. You know, Jarrett's been posting about that quite a
Oh
lot,
yeah,
and I ordered just a bag of that. It's just like 8 different types of nootropic mushroom. It's not a
okay,
psychedelic in any sense. It's more just energy boost, brain, neuron regeneration, uh, anti anxiety. A few different. There's quite a lot of benefits for a lot of them, and just it's interesting that you know why in the world has the idea of like using the earth to heal yourself, standing
dude.
out in grass, being out in the sun, breathing fresh air. Why when did that become something that's so taboo and so like hippie? I'm like,
Yeah,
this was the thing for tens of thousands of years.
what blows
Now
my mind.
now we're inside all these boxes and we drive to a building where a person with a doctor's cap says, oh, take this pill instead of going outside and taking a walk through nature, grabbing a mushroom and taking a bite. It's
Yeah.
just it's so funny because I'm like, why in the world are mushrooms so taboo? Like if I mention this to my parents or you know I know quite a few pastors, and if I mention it to them, they look at me as if maybe I'm even influenced by the devil, and I'm just like,
Oh yeah, you're
okay,
crazy.
okay, wait a minute. Don't you know who Harley is? Harley is not a
Yeah,
person who, is going to be spreading hate, that like the
yeah.
devil or lies. My goal is to spread truth and positivity. And so that's, I normally explain to them my experience with psychedelics to try to help them understand. And like I can still tell, like you said, your parents, that's just not their path. They might not ever understand fully, but if it works for you and if it worked for me, I just don't see what the problem is. And so yeah,
I really love that going outside and put your fucking feet in the grass and staring at the sun is like the new like oh, just so you guys know, this is the shit. Like, hey, no, how did we? No, duh. I'm like, go get fresh air. Really? Like, like that's the new hidden knowledge. I love it. It's all such basic shit. Don't eat shit from the grocery store and the fucking like mind blowing. Dude, we have become we're so fucking distant from where we were. And I think with the psychedelics though, you said you know a lot of pastors. And I have a very familiar. I was raised very Christian, so I feel like that's kind of how this will happen. But it's like my parents went through the '60s, and the hippies went fucking nuts during the '60s. Not saying they fucked it up for everybody, but they kind of fucked it up for everybody. You can't be out having sex in the middle of the road. Like we gotta we gotta find the balance, you know. You can't just be like we don't need war, or we don't need war, obviously, but like there's other countries that I'm like, oh, you don't need a military? Check this out. So there has to be a realistic approach. And that's one of like the first times I took mushrooms ever. Actually, I was very religious but in a negative sense. You know, I was already battling in my head, and I took mushrooms and I saw the Bible crushed in front of me. But it wasn't saying the Bible like was false. It was saying like the way you believe it is so false, and like it was explaining things that I would never be able to explain to myself. Like, and I don't know if they're just thoughts of my own, but I like to think it wasn't. It was saying, like this hell approach is so like fucking terrible for mankind, and it's very man-made, and you have to like look out for what's real and what's not. And I don't. Have you ever heard of the Mushroom and the Sacred Cross, the book?
no.
So I'm gonna butcher this, but I don't have my notes in front of me for this. there was, I think, 11 people, 11 guys, like breaking down the Book of Agita, the Book of the Dead. And it's the first Bible. It's wrote on animal skin. And one of them was like, hey, this whole book is about psychedelics. Like, so for one, we know 1/3 of ancient Hebrew. So if I give you A through G of the alphabet and I say, hey, explain to me any of these books, you're not going to know what the fuck we're talking about. But this one guy is like, hey, these people are all on mushrooms. Like in Catholics, like you eat the piece of bread, eat thy body, drink thy blood. He's saying that's mushrooms. Like you're eating mushrooms, you're drinking the drink of ayahuasca. And out of everyone, he gets completely banned. So no one even questions like if he's right or wrong. They're just like, nope. All 10 of us agreed on that it's about this. And he's like, okay. And he's just completely shunned. And the moment something like that happens to me now, I'm like, I double down on questioning what that guy was into, you know? Like if everyone tries to tell me this dude's lying, I got to find out what that guy's talking about. But yeah, I would look into it. I haven't read it in so long, but it's called The Mushroom and the Sacred Cross.
Interesting.
Or something like that.
I've read a book recently that's very similar in some ways. It's called The Immortality Key.
Okay.
It's like, I forget, there's a second title for it, but either way, it goes through this historical account of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and how the Greek gods, like Dionysus, for example, was the god of wine, the god of drunkenness, and it might not have been just regular wine. There's even scientific evidence they found in some of these tombs ergot, which is the rot that grows on a barley leaf, which actually turns into LSD when you consume it.
Ooh.
And so, like, in these small little chalices in these caves, there's been LSD traces within these, cups. And I'm like, huh, that is interesting. And I actually have a poster of the bread and the wine. You might not be able to fully see it because it's kind of zoomed in, but either way, communion, I feel like, is something that's super, super important. But I'm like, I feel like we're missing a piece of it, and that piece might just be the plant medicine we're talking about. The plants that can give you an experience that is truly transformative. Like, take this, become like me, become like the gods. Become enlightened in some sense. And I'm not saying that you take mushrooms, you become super wise and super smart, but I feel like your mind is opened up to a different dimension, and you are able to look at life from maybe a more objective stance. And, I could be called a heretic like 20 times for saying that I was reading that book, but I'm like, I would like you to try to disprove this. I would like to see you try to disprove these theories of plant medicine. And yeah,
and I get that. So there's a lot of dogma and everything. So I think a lot of the things, and if you hear my baby in the background, I got a mushroom story for that as well. But it's like, okay, we need to go do this surgery or whatever to save your life, and then someone goes to the jungle to take some drink, and then they still die, and everyone's like, fuck, we told them, all you need to do is the surgery. And I'm sure there are cases of that. And by the way, just so I don't forget, it's called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John Alago. So just so I don't mess that up. But I think there's like you've made it. I've seen a lot of your posts and stuff, and I think you have a very clear understanding of things. Like even when you're saying you hope they are just ignorant about being evil and they're not actual evil people running the world, because a lot of times, if I'm pushing all this money at you for this study, and say I'm the pharmaceutical company, and all your studies, all this time you put into these studies, they all say these same things, and you truly start believing them, and then someone dies because of your study, the study you followed, that doesn't make you evil. That makes you ignorant. And I think that a lot of that's going on even with psychedelics. And I love how you said that psychedelics actually, they can be dangerous, 100%. I would say I have a small form of schizophrenia, and I didn't really know this until I took psychedelics. I've taken 5 grams of mushrooms a lot by myself. And one of the first things I started noticing was that I would feel like there's 2 people. I'm like, okay, there's 2 people here talking. But of course, this is back to why I love psychedelics. I feel like they brought those two people back to one, back to who, the eye, who controls the eyes. I would always hear that in my head, and I would move my eyes and be like, like it's me. It always comes back to me. And they can be very dangerous, though. I do know people, especially with research chemicals. I knew a kid who was the most intelligent man I've ever met in my life. He was going off to Harvard, and he took and I've taken it too. It's called 4-ACO. You could buy it from a Canadian research company, and it is a synthetic mushroom. And this dude took it like every day for a week, and just a week, 7 days. And he was never ever the same to this day. His family won't talk to him. He's completely mad. He thinks everybody is in on some grand scheme. When he walks past people, he thinks they're talking about them. And this is someone who was going to Harvard, that he was on his way, scholarship and all. And we do have to be careful, 100%. That might be a little off track, but I didn't want to forget about that.
Yeah, I like adding nuance to these kinds of discussions because, some people, even Jarrett, sometimes I feel like, you're not being that nuanced. You're saying, oh, mushrooms are fine. Oh, take mushrooms all the time. I'm like, yeah, they're pretty useful, and they seem to really helped you, and they've helped me. But there's cons to things. There's trade-offs to life. Like, what would be interesting is if someone if they didn't ever need to take a mushroom, then that's okay too. You don't need everyone to take it. It's just you have to. This is something that, like, I was watching this documentary called How to Change Your Mind. You may have heard of it. It's on Netflix, but super good. It dives into 4 substances: LSD, psilocybin, I think peyote, and mescaline. I don't know, 4 of them, but either way, I don't think it was mescaline, something else. But either way, just on the first 2, the psilocybin and LSD, those are the 2 that I was mostly interested in. Like, I was thinking to myself, okay, they're outlining such a case, a scientific case, a case that truly defends why taking these substances in controlled environments with safe, people with, registered clinicians is a really useful thing. And I'm like, man, they can't make it more clear. And the data just is honestly irrefutable. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm just like, I'm getting annoyed because I'm like, there's just some people on this earth who do not have an open enough mind to even watch this or even ever put this on. If I were to say to one of the parents that I know, there's this documentary, it is on psychedelics, but I really think you should watch it. They're going to look at me like, I'm never going to watch something like that. That's just not what I'm going to do. And I'm like, well, I guess you're missing out on data that I find so useful and important. So
yeah, something that really changed your life, 100%. Just because my baby's crying, I'll tell you a story. And this is the last time that I ever got wasted. So this is not that long ago. My baby is 16 months old, so let's say 2.5 years ago. And with psychedelics, you do learn all these things, right? But you can forget them. You can lose that drive. Even though I've never went back to my old self, I've still fucked around. And me and my girl, we were like going through a weird transition of where we lived. And I think we were at like a friend's party. We got pretty drunk, and I was like drunk enough to where it was where she was almost starting to take care of me, right? So I have an ounce of mushrooms at home, and I come home and I get us both out 3 grams. She eats 3 grams, I ate 3 grams. She goes into the living room for whatever reason, and I ate 3 more grams, and I ate 3 more grams, and I ate 3 more, and so she comes back in the room, and the entire bag is gone. So I have now ingested 25 grams of mushrooms, which is terrifying, right? It's not good. No one should ever do it. It's not good for me. It's not good for anybody. And I'm wasted, and I'm like, why aren't these mushrooms working? And I swear it was like in like a video game, like when a boss enters the room, it was like doom doom doom, and the sky, the moon, everything was just a sign that like I was evil, that like I was the fallen angel in the Bible, that mankind was the fault, was Lucifer, and we're trapped here forever. When we die, we're gonna pop right back here. It's gonna restart. We're never getting out of this. All this like terrifying, like schizophrenic, intense feelings. And I tell people these kind of stories not to like, oh, like this is fun or cool. I tell them so this is why you have to prep everything. Like this broke all my rules. You have to plan every mushroom trip. You have to know you're taking it weeks in advance. You don't just, oh, my friend has mushrooms, I'm taking him today. Fuck no. You gotta fast. You gotta pray. You gotta be in touch with yourself. And if you don't, stuff like this can happen. You definitely don't want to be intoxicated off fucking alcohol. So, and now I've eaten 25 grams of mushrooms, and I'm in hell. My girlfriend's crying, but to me she's laughing. Like, so she's crying, and I just see her laughing like an evil laugh, but she's bawling her eyes out. She's like, how the fuck, what are we gonna do? I'm screaming. She thinks the cops are gonna get called, but I'm not screaming at her. I'm just screaming out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, nothing good can come out of this. This is terrible. And a trance hits me, and I just start, like, for an hour and a half, starting saying, let's make a baby. Let's make a baby. Let's make a baby. And she's like, please stop. And I'm broken. I can't stop saying it. So hour and a half, and I have not stopped chanting this over and over and over and over. So she's completely exhausted, right? The next day, I wake up, I'm still tripping. And she is just like, she's like fed up. She's so strung out over like the stress. So she's like, I'm going to my friends. I'm going to hang out, blah, 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 have a drink, whatever. So comes home the next night. I'm finally better. And I feel like this like glowing in me. Like I was like, nothing good can come from this. But then like there was this thought like this is what's coming from it. And that night we conceived our daughter. Never had a kid. Never even thought I was going to have a kid. Never not tried to have a kid. And that night she got pregnant. So crazy story, kind of an offsetting story, but it's like it's a good and a bad thing. So I always joke around and say that the baby's real daddy's the mushroom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Like, I just have a theory off of what you're saying. Like, maybe your subconscious was saying like, maybe I need something that's gonna help me like take life seriously. Maybe I need something that's really gonna force me to grow up. That's gonna force me to be a man.
Dude.
That's gonna force me to be a better husband or whatever. And it was saying like having a kid actually might be the solution to some of this. And I don't know
I
how it's
100%
been,
agree.
but like, how has it been after you've had a kid? Have you had to change? Like, have you had to grow?
Dude, we bought our own house after, so we have a beautiful house. Like, we've completely changed our entire lives. The moment, it's funny that you say that, because we always said like we don't want to have a kid and be like, this is what got our shit completely together, and it was exactly that. Like, she's the best. She's the best thing that's ever happened to us. We both instantly like have grown up. Like it's now it's game time. It's work time. She just started her own company. It's been nothing but good. Yeah. So, but yeah, dude, you're spot on. It's like, I think a lot of like tripping is your subconscious mixing, because your subconscious is always there, right? It's just dormant. And these psychedelics are like, hey, let me go get your subconscious out here to talk to your conscious, because you're being an idiot.
Yeah, man, I agree. We'll keep going.
Yeah, well, so no, that was it. I mean, it's just I didn't mean to even cut you off on that, but like that's I don't know what it is about stuff like that, but like my whole life has been based around that. When I was a
Based around
kid,
what?
just like something intense changing everything, and now it's been psychedelics. And to even make this more sound like a video game, the first time I ever took mushrooms in my life, I was in my buddy's basement. And it was the first time I ever seen my girlfriend in real life, but we didn't date for years after. So she came down. Me and my buddy are tripping, and my other buddy's like, oh, I can't believe you guys tripped without me. I'm going to smoke, whatever. Has these girls come over, ends up being my girl, and I didn't even know at the time. So first time I ever tripping in my life, I see her, and my other buddy's like, they have to leave. So he rushes them out. But it's just very strange. Like, in what world, the first time I trip, I see her ever? For the first time, and then years later we get together, and we've been together almost over 10 years now, almost 11 years. So I just like look at life a lot like that. I think I'm not saying there's more to life, like, but okay, we're saying psychedelics are crazy, right? But you know what's crazy? Me and you sitting here talking right now in this realm, this reality, and you hear all these people like, oh, like they won't even watch the fucking Netflix documentary you're talking about. That's not shit. Psychedelics are literally nothing. What's crazy is that we live in a goddamn universe, and I'm talking to you over this. Who knows how we're doing this? This is even extra crazy. The screen part is beyond this world. But even if we were face to face with no microphone, no podcast, that's crazy enough. You're an entity that looks like me, but you're not me. You're the same species. We're making noise, you know. I think psychedelics make real life normal shit crazy. We're breathing air, like that's what happens when you trip. The normal shit gets nuts where you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And is this all random to you? Like, do you truly believe this is all random to, like, for you, Harley? Like, do you think this is all random, or do you think that this is something for you? What do you think life is?
Well, so I'm gonna use a word called pragmatic. Do you know what that means?
Yeah. To
So
but
like, yeah, keep going.
no, explain. You could. I might have my definition off. So
Sure. So, I guess to me, if I were to look at the world as if it was just completely random, I wouldn't have any framework from which to act. Like, in my opinion, it's not that useful for me, or not that pragmatic, which, useful for me to live life as, oh, it's completely random. What I'm saying out of my mouth is just completely, it's just the roll of the dice of what I'm going to say next, or it's just the roll of the dice of who's going to come into my life. If I live like that, I just, it's hard for me to act. If I live life like, okay, Harley, you only have one shot at this, whether or not that's true, I have no idea what happens after death. But, I try to live life as, right now you're Harley Seelbinder, and that's all you have. So live life with intention, reach out to Davey, have him on your podcast. You might as well. You never know what's going to happen. In my opinion, what's happening right now isn't necessarily random. It was random that we happened to be placed. I was born in Kazoo. You might have been born in Detroit. I don't know where you're from exactly, but
yep.
It's like that might be slightly random, but it's hard for me to live life as everything's random, because then I'm like, what's the point of even trying? If I try something that's, if I try just a medium amount, but then it randomly works out perfectly, it's like, I just don't like that. I like to live life as, I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm going to try to say exactly what's on my mind in a loving, truthful way. And, in my opinion, life has gotten better and better, and I don't think that's random. So that's just my perception.
I love that. Buddhism, they call it the middle way. That's what they call Buddhism, because that what you're speaking of would be nihilism. So we're just stardust, man. We just all appeared here randomly. The universe is random. One day you're going to die and it's never going to matter. But then there's eternalism, which is what always was, always will be. So that you've had to come from somewhere. This is clearly something beyond you. And then, there's relative reality, which is, oh man, I'm thirsty. I need to take a drink of water. But eternalism is that you're always going to exist, and then it goes back to science. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So and what I love about Buddhism that I've been getting more into, it says nihilism and eternalism hang out together. So it doesn't matter, like either which way, it doesn't matter, because it's really happening to you right now, right? So whether it's
life is happening to you right now.
Yeah, and like if it's random or not, or if it all has a meaning or all doesn't, it doesn't matter, because if it matters to you, then it matters. If it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter. And I think that's a really cool way to look at it. I'm with you on that, though. I have a hard time thinking like, oh, I'm just fucking, feels too, I hate to sound crazy, but it feels like a video game or something. It feels like, I don't know, like there's more to this, or that we've done this before, or something like that,
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Like, I feel like deep conversations, or just, running into someone you didn't expect to in the store, or maybe just in general. Like, I feel like sometimes, like, coming from a Christian family, sometimes I'm like, is this a coincidence, or is this like a God instance? Or, how is this life, set up? Is this life, it feels like I've had this happen before. Is this because I've done this before? I don't know. It's just, and one of my main things that I feel like psychedelics has helped me with is recognizing that you honestly, Harley, don't know very much. There's so much unknowns to life. You know, there's ambiguity and there's just uncertainty. And, you know, I have some things that I'm certain of, but there's a huge amount of things that I'm less certain of and almost know nothing about. And, you know, that's one of my main critiques of someone who is like, you know, fundamentally religious, like believe a text, you know,
Yeah. Oh my
literally,
God.
because sometimes I'm like, you know, I think the text that they're using, let's say the Bible, is incredibly useful, and Jesus is a great role model. I try my best to act and sometimes even look like Jesus, you know. I
Hell
just
yeah,
try to be
dude.
that kind of guy. But, you know, I'm not certain that reading it as if I know exactly what happened and I know exactly how this story works and I know, you know, I know that Jesus is the savior. Sometimes living life like that, I'm like, I feel like there's less of an adventure. There's less of a exploration process. There's less of a just a learning. And, you know, it's like my favorite phrase ever. It's like, you know, wisdom begins with fearing the Lord. When you realize that you don't know very much, you learn so much and you become so much wiser. And, you know, it's like that's one of my favorite things, like, in life. You know, assume that the person you're speaking to knows something you don't. Assume that you could learn so much. Ask questions. You know about 0.1% of even the thing that you know most about. So, you know, all of
I love
this.
that.
And like after I took psychedelics, I've realized, like, you know, Harley, you need to be way more humble. You know, even if you feel as if you know something, you need to realize that there's billions of people and everyone has a different perception of God. Everyone has a different perception of belief. Everyone has a different perception of what life is, what life looks like after death. You know, don't be so hard-headed. Oh, I know exactly what life is like. You know,
Yeah, we don't know
I'm
shit.
one person on this complicated planet that, you know, who knows what else is outside the earth even, you know. So yeah,
And
yeah, that go ahead.
the coolest thing is like with all of that, it's like everyone knows a little bit, but also everyone knows nothing. You know one thing about me for sure, and that I was born and I don't remember shit from before, and I'm willing to bet you don't, and nobody else does. And then we have people here that are like, no, this is the way. Like, bro, you don't know nothing. You're born just like me. We fucking all start with a clean slate. If we remembered before life, that'd be a whole different story, but we don't. And to think that like man hasn't tampered with the Bible, I like you're from a Christian background, so I think you could, you know, you're probably more familiar with this, like as me. But like Christianity has is a boring religion in the sense that it's so like if you don't do this, you go to hell. The stories are this, but then you look into Hinduism or Buddhism, and there are these like complex, beautiful stories, and it's like, yeah, we don't really care if you believe them. These are all just ideas for other things, and it's like, man, like Christianity. And then I think Christianity used to be like that, like Christ-like, having a Christ consciousness. That's all it means. You know what I mean? I don't think it's like, oh, if you fucking believe this Jewish guy died for your sins, if you don't, you're going to hell. Like, and then I ask like Christians this all the time, and I'm not trying to bash Christians. I love Christianity. I think there's a bunch of beautiful things about it. I think people have ruined it. But if you ask them, like, okay, a Buddhist, a kid is raised in who knows where, but he's a Buddhist his whole life. You come and tell him about Christ, and he dies. They're like, no, he goes to hell. He knew about Christ. It's like, all right, what kind of fair fucking game are we playing here? Like,
Yeah.
that's just the shit. It's so goofy. Religion
I'm
is so goofy.
I'm with you, bro. It's interesting. Like, you know, let's say that there was a Buddhist kid who turned into a man who lived out probably one of the best lives he could lived out. You know, he was truly loving, humble, genuine, helped his community, helped his family, was a great father, etc. You know, but he happened to just not utter, I believe Jesus Christ was my savior. You know, like he
Yeah.
was
Straight to hell
99.5%
with them,
there,
then.
but he
Just
didn't
kidding.
utter those words with his mouth. And I'm just like, you know, is this really what Jesus was truly trying to say? I'm not sure. You know, but it comes back to the unknown. I'm not certain, but you know, to me, that just doesn't seem like a very loving attitude. You know, it just doesn't seem that understanding, and it just it you know, some people say, "Oh, Jesus, the story of Jesus is so optimistic. You know, it's so happy. You know, all you got to do is accept, and then you're locked into heaven." And you know, and I'm like,
It's that
that's
easy.
really, really, really optimistic if if you stay within that little bubble. But if you ever look outside of it and realize, there's billions of people that aren't saying what we're saying in this bubble. guess what? They're all going to hell under this, doctrine. And I'm like, or under this just perception of the doctrine. And, I'm only 21. I don't know enough about all this, and that's why I like to have these discussions. But to me, I'm like, I really want one day to meet Jesus and ask him, like, were you literally a person who rose from the dead, or were you a person who just wanted people to love each other? And,
Or
I
were you
don't know.
not even a person in an ideology? Like, what is it,
I'm pretty certain he
A
lived. Like,
physical person?
there's been some scientific evidence, and like, honestly, 2,000 years ago is not that far ago.
No.
They can carbon date quite a few things, and you know,
If you trust the people carbon dating.
sure, that's true.
I mean, you are right. There probably was a person. Because to me, it's like, not that I fucking know so much about that time, but like with Romans taking over everything, it's like, dude, everyone was hopping on that bandwagon. Like, yeah, like, it's like, sure, I'll believe in Jesus. Like, just let's get these fucking tyrants out of here, you know? But the whole thing is, to me, with Christianity, for what it is now, real person or not, I think about like, okay, Jeffrey Dahmer. He's a big talk of the town right now because he's the Netflix series. He gets saved at the end of it, right? So you can eat people, but as long as at the very end you're like, yo, Jesus, I was just kidding. I love you so much. My bad. We're all good. But then if like you go back to the Buddhist kid that didn't get to say that, he doesn't go to heaven, but Jeffrey Dahmer does. Like, come the fuck on, guys. And in the Bible, a lot of times, God sounds like the devil. Like he sends two bulls down to kill some kids because they make fun of a man with no hair or something like that. Something along those lines. Like, that doesn't...
Bears? It might be bears.
Is it bears?
Yeah.
Bulls, bears. I knew it was a B word. It might have been an old lady with no hair. I don't know. Something like that. But, dude, it's just like... that shit kind of blows my mind. And I'll tell you something that really... messed me up as a kid. What kind of Christian were you? There's fucking 20 of them.
Probably like more Protestant. I went to this Christian school, preschool all the way through 12th grade. So I'm heavily like, I honestly know a lot of the stories of the Bible pretty well
Nice.
in some ways.
Is it Catholic?
It's Protestant. So
Oh,
like,
Protestant.
Reformed.
Okay,
What about
yes,
you?
yes. Baptist. So
Okay,
like
yeah,
a little more
similar.
chill. Yeah, but it is. So I went to Sunday school my whole life. I didn't go to. I went to public schools, but so there's this girl in my Sunday school. We are 10 years old, right? Fast forward. Hold on, I'll jump around. Okay, so I go to get baptized, right? I'm like, I'm 14 years old. The whole church is watching. It's a big ordeal that I'm getting baptized. And I'm walking out the thing to go get put in the tub and dunked. Right when I get put in the tub, the preacher looks at me and he goes, "It's warm in here. Did you piss in here?" And my first thought, as a 14-year-old kid, I go, this dude just pissed in here and he's about to dunk me in it. And I don't know why I thought that. I thought that immediately, right? So right away, so I get baptized. Probably this dude pissed in the water and fucking dunked me in it. I don't know. That's what my 14. But the fact that he said that is so absurd, right? As the preacher, the guy doing it. And I remember driving home like, I'm not different. My brain is still thinking all sorts of crazy shit. I thought I was gonna like be floating on the way home, And I'm like, oh no, it didn't work. So fast forward to today. I had Sunday school with this girl my whole life. She's my age, 10 years old. The day she turned 18, the year she turned 18, that preacher has 2 kids with her, who he taught us since we were 10 years old. And that's like where so these are the people that are like, oh, I'm supposed to believe everything they fucking say, But psychedelics are the bad guys. And obviously that's a one church, one personal experience, but I still think that's so absurd because if there's power, a lot of times it'll be corrupted.
Sure. Yeah, like I have some examples of pastors that I can actually respect quite a lot. Like,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
I feel like I actually give to one church because I'm like, dang, they do a lot of good things in KZoo. Like, they help a lot of homeless people. They help a lot of orphans. They help a lot of single mothers with this money. They show me where the money goes, and I see it. And yeah, a slight portion of my money goes to some of their salaries, but I'm like, yeah, they need money to live. But,
Yeah.
like, I actually am kind of a person who thinks, like, guess where did all these hospitals come from? Where did all the homeless shelters come from? They originated from Catholic and Christian
Yeah.
churches. And so it's like people take these things for granted and think, oh, because it's we're having to give money to this organization that makes it corrupt. And I'm like, it certainly can happen, but it also, there's a reason why, money has to be a part of the equation if we want the spread of good to happen. And so, I like to add a little bit of just, I'm not someone who's certain that Jesus is the savior, but I am someone who's certain that, some churches are truly doing a lot of good in this world, and, some aren't, like in your experience, but some are.
I mean, I've had good experience too. I'm telling an intense story for a podcast. I'm telling
Sure.
my worst idea. And sure, when I went in the basement of that church, they had money counters. It was it was the most gangster shit I've ever saw. But yeah, I'm just going to say it like that's my corrupt story. I also do know of churches that have done amazing things, 100%. That have that have went out of country and helped people and have helped Detroit and stuff. Yeah, so obviously I'm talking a little bit of shit,
Sure. Yeah, like I actually just had a conversation with one of my old youth group leaders, and he was convinced me, maybe, I was saying, like, yeah, I haven't actually gone to church in a while. I go sometimes, but it's just not been for me. And he's like, I'd like you to come to my church to, just see what you think of it. He was giving some reasons, and I'm like, yeah, I'll come. I have an open mind about things, but, sometimes it's hard for me to fully relate with people who seem to have the entire equation of life completely solved. Christianity in some sense is like the simple answer. Like, I've already got it solved. Jesus is the answer. There's no more need to really question. You can, but it's not necessary. And I'm just on the opposite end of the spectrum where I'm like, I need to question literally everything before I do anything or say anything because I can't.
And even then you're still, what do you know? Even once you question it all, and that, dude, I respect that, because when you're raised through Christianity, it really is like it's everything. And when you see people where they're like, and honestly, for the people who think, oh, you got it all figured out, that's cool. I don't,
Yeah, and that is cool, actually. I agree. That's well said.
Yeah, like, I'm glad for them. That's fucking awesome, because I'm over here taking mushrooms, freaking myself out sometimes. And if you don't have to do that, good for you. Yeah, I think it's a balance, right? I love that. But man, so I went to this college where it was like, most people are Muslim, and it was the craziest thing because this kid was talking to me. This is already after I had started taking mushrooms and, been on my path. And he said the same thing that someone from like a Christian school would say. He was like, man, you just need to trust in God. Once you find Allah, you'll understand. I was like, dude, you said the exact same thing, but took Allah and switched to Jesus. Like, spiritual religion's a tricky one. I'm glad that you actually know about Christianity, because a lot of times I talk about people and they're like, dude, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I wasn't raised through any of that. I'm like, man, it's a trip, isn't it?
It really is. Like, that example of, the Muslim, it's such an interesting example. Like, I had a guy who on the podcast I've known at my university, and I happened to have him on. We're talking for like 20, 30 minutes. The topic of religion comes up. We're like, there's so much common ground, we're so much. And then he says the word Allah, or, and then I was like,
love it, dude.
Whoa, wait a second. And I thought this whole time that Muslims were like, oh, the bad religion, oh, Muslim.
No,
why would
dude,
you ever look into Islam? And I'm
God.
like, wow, this guy is completely reasonable. He's literally just a Christian in different skin with
different words.
Language. Yeah, exactly. And
I'm sure the stories are the same too.
And I'll add some nuance for the Christians watching. Muhammad wasn't as great of a role model as Jesus. Muhammad took sex slaves. Muhammad actually, conquered nations and killed a ton of people. Jesus honestly didn't do any of that. He was pretty much just love, peace, and humility. So that's why I'm biased towards Christianity. But, still, humans today, it's like there's really not that many huge differences between Christianity and Islam when you truly just ask a person what their opinion of religion is.
All religions, dude. They all kind of have the same bearing thoughts. It's very strange. And I'm not saying that they're all replicas of each other, because they're not. But they all talk about a flood. They were all around the same, There's a lot of similar shit. But I'm glad you know about that too. Like, I always thought the story, where Jesus has, I guess they were hookers back then, and they're washing his feet with their hair. And they're like, get away from him. And he's like, whoa, whoa. I'm like, dude, Jesus was a pimp. Who knew? He was also a carpenter, right?
Yeah, his dad was, at least, so he grew up in that realm. Yeah.
Oh, his dad, right?
Well, like his earthly dad, whatever
that
is, Joseph. Joseph.
I love that shit. I was a carpenter. I had my journeyman's in carpentry.
Oh, well done.
And I used to always, I had long hair at the time, and I'd be like, dude, you gotta do what Jesus did.
Oh, that's so sweet, actually. Wow, I love that a lot. Yeah,
I heard a funny quote that he was like, Jesus obviously wasn't that good of a carpenter, because there's nothing like, oh, Jesus built this. Like, yo, there's that big building he built. You gotta joke about it. You gotta have fun with it.
Funny. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, man, it's truly, when I first started this podcast, my first episode was actually just on porn addiction and how I've kind of resorted out of that in some ways. That's a tangent for another time. But then I was thinking of, okay, what episode to do next? Oh, another important topic. In the back of my mind, I was like, man, I really want to bring up my doubts about Christianity. I really want to bring up my skepticism. I really want to bring this up. But in my mind,
you did it so respectfully.
I was like, I grew up in this little community, and now, most of the people see the are going to hear me, and then they're going to be like, oh, Harley's just some now secular heathen. And I'm like, well, and so I finally did it, and I recorded my thoughts on religion. I finally started talking about my skepticism, brought up psychedelics, did the whole thing. And, it's actually been insanely freeing, because it's like, because I've been processing out my thoughts each week with different people and just analyzing, I've learned so much, and I've learned to grow and learn to agree to disagree with the people I grew up with, and still truly love them as Jesus might. But I'm less just like, oh, what is this person gonna think because I said this? I'm more like, I'm gonna say with as much love and truth as I can, and if they can't accept it or don't want to listen, that's on them. So yeah, it's been a true growing experience for me.
And the beautiful thing about it is you're going to help so many people who also are feeling that and are too afraid to. But you know what? I will say this about you, man. You've done it very, very beautifully, in the sense that you haven't, to me, if I watched this and I was like full devoted Christian, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, this kid is an asshole. I would be like, wow, like he's still saying, you're very respectful, and you're very like open-minded, truly open-minded. A lot of people think they're open-minded. I would say, Harley, you truly are. And I think that's awesome, man. It really is. For you being 21, it's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. Not to like blow smoke up your ass, but dude, whatever you do, don't quit doing this podcast. Like you got something beautiful here.
Man, bro, that means a lot. I really appreciate it,
Yeah, definitely. And dude, I mean, I'm down to do this whenever again. Actually, if you want to do my podcast next, you'll be able to, you don't got to worry about people, your hometown seeing. They might not. I had the same thing.
I truly would. Yeah, let's
absolutely. We'll do it. What next week? You want to?
Yeah, we can talk about it off cam.
Yeah.
We can figure it out. But yeah, man, that means a lot. And, I think you should keep doing your pod too. Like I just had a guy on who was like, your voice is something that's so powerful, and you have the ability to now share it on the internet if you want, and it takes a lot of vulnerability, but if you're able to do it, who knows, like you said, you might impact someone that is truly struggling, that truly is doubting us. Maybe you're bringing up stories of being addicted, and there's someone who clicks on it and they're about to take something, and then they hear your story and they're like, maybe I should give a second thought. I'm like, no. I really think you have power in your story and in your voice. So keep doing what you're doing too, man.
Likewise, man. For sure. Definitely, dude. And it's cool just because, you start meeting more people like yourself, and we make a little group, and fucking who knows where the limit is with that.
Exactly. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, I'd say that's a perfect place to end it,
Definitely.
We covered the plant medicine and then the religion. It's like the two deepest, most complicated things
Brought
on
them
earth.
together. Literally. Oh, thank God we didn't talk about politics. Jeez.
Yeah.
We would have ruined the whole podcast. No.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah. Yeah, man. Well, thanks
yeah,
for coming on.
Absolutely,
dude.
It was great meeting
finally meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon, bro.
Certainly.
All right, take